when I worked at the Wave. I did weekends at the Wave for a couple of years when they were brand new. And ironically, my first shift on the Wave, just as a board op, was actually the final night that it was still called KMET before it switched formats.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive podcast. My name is Josh Jacobs, and it's an honor to be speaking with radio personality, writer, and producer Jim Nelson. Thanks for being with us.
Well, hey, Josh. How are you?
Good, thank you, and thanks for coming on the show here. Tell us about your background and how you got inspired to get into radio.
Well, interesting. I have to start by telling you how I got into music, because that was a very defining moment. I was like maybe 7 years old and working in, doing my Saturday morning chore in my parents' bedroom. They had the clock radio on, and I heard the DJ, 93 KHJ, say, "Here's the new one from the Monkees," and I heard those opening organ notes to "I'm a Believer," and something changed right there. I just, like a switch got turned on, and I became this huge music junkie. And as a sort of offshoot of that, I started listening to the radio constantly so that I could record all of my favorite songs on a little tape deck. And so by extension, I became a radio aficionado, listening to top 40 radio in Los Angeles in the late 60s and up until probably the mid 70s. And about the same time that disco came around, I was discovering KMET, and got into rock and roll, fell for it really hard, and went backwards and learned about all the rock music that I had missed by listening to top 40 radio. But it was DJs like Jim Ladd and Bob Coburn, Mary Turner and her news guy, Pat Kelly, all inspired me, and some of them helped me along the way, and that was kind of the genesis of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I met Pat Kelly about 28 years ago, just very friendly. He was at the Paley Center, which then was called the Museum of Radio and Television, and one night they had the top 40 DJs, which included Casey Kasem, Johnny Hayes, Dan Ingram was there, Brian Byrne, Art LeBeau. I'm skipping over a couple of them right now. And then the next night we had the FM jocks, including Jim Ladd, J.J. Jackson, Jeff Gonzer, Paraquat Kelly, Cynthia Fox, Rachel Donahue. And so I got talking with, because everybody was like gathering toward Ladd. They all wanted to talk to Jim Ladd. So I thought, let me talk to Paraquat Kelly, because Jim was just loving on Paraquat Kelly. He says, people say Howard Stern's funny, Howard Stern this, Howard Stern that. F Howard Stern. Paraquat Kelly, this guy was funny. And so we got to talking, and he was just a very, very friendly person.
Yeah. Yeah, he actually helped me out when I was in college. The first professional radio person that ever did, really. I had to do a project for one of my radio classes, like maybe a radio marketing class or something, and I needed to interview somebody, and he was doing the news on KMET in the evenings and doing this thing called the Fish Report with the Beat with Mary Turner on like Friday evenings. And so he was just this funny, seemingly approachable guy. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm doing this project. I need to interview somebody. Would you mind if I come down?" And he said, "Sure." So I drove into Hollywood and met him up at the station to interview him for this project. But he wound up just kind of teaching me how he did his job. And when he went in to do the news with Mary Turner, he invited me into the booth to be in there with him while he was doing it, and just was really friendly. And I wound up going down and just hanging out with him a couple of other times after that. And he introduced me to Bob Coburn and Jack Snyder, and who else? I guess those would be the ones that I met given the time frame. But Mary Turner, of course, and the program director Sam Bellamy at the time.
Oh yeah.
So Pat was really cool and played a part in the beginnings of my professional radio career.
Wow. And what was some of your favorite memories of being there at the Mighty Met? Describe the studios the way you remembered them, as well as kind of the way the shifts went.
All right. Well, this was probably 1978. It was Gonzer in the morning with Ace Young as the newscaster. Then you had, let's see, that would have been Cynthia Fox, I think, was 10 to 2 maybe. And then Bob Coburn, until he moved back to Chicago to become the music director and afternoon guy, I think, at WMET. Bob was the afternoon guy at KMET, and I thought he was just fantastic on the air and was really thrilled to have had a chance to meet him. Jack Snyder took over afternoons when Bob went back to Chicago. And then you had Mary Turner from 6 to 10 p.m. and Jim Ladd 10 to 2 a.m. And the place was dark and a little dingy, a lot of dark brown everywhere. I wound up working in that studio a few years later. I think it was the same studio, although it was had been laid. Walls had been taken down and it was laid out a little bit differently. But I think it was the same one. When I worked at the Wave, I did weekends at the Wave for a couple of years when they were brand new. And ironically, my first shift on the Wave, just as a board op, was actually the final night that it was still called KMET before it switched formats. This was back in 1987. So I did a 6 p.m. to midnight shift on what was still being called KMET, but all the DJs had been let go a couple of weeks earlier. So it was basically just board ops running the music. And ironically, it was Jim Ladd's air shift. So I was signing programming logs, on what was Jim Ladd's programming logs. So that was pretty wild since I had been such a huge Jim Ladd fan growing up. First time I met him was a real big deal as well.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember that happening. And if anybody's ever read Jim Ladd's book Radio Waves: Life and Revolution of the FM Band, he had talked about how his final night on the shift, it was raining out. He was smoking a cigarette, and he noticed the phone line was lighting up. He thought, well, I'm not going to get it because I'm going to have to reject this caller's, request because the playlist had become so tight and so homogenized. He finally, took his lighter and burnt the playlist and queued up a bunch of records that hadn't been played in a long time. And then the hotline rang up. He says, I knew it was either the GM or the program director, but I thought, forget this. I'm just having too much of a good time. I'll deal with this in the morning. But then they all got fired, I think, at some hotel in town. And so they didn't actually get to say goodbye on KMET. They did say goodbye both on KLOS 95.5 and then the new classic rock station in town, 97.1 KLSX. And I just thought that was just so tasteless of KMET management to do that.
It's standard operating procedure, though, You don't give the DJ a chance to say goodbye when you fire them, because that would also be giving them the opportunity to completely trash the radio station live on the radio. So it's harsh, but it's the way it goes, and radio DJs, pretty much understand that.
Yeah. But I thought it was cool that KLOS and KLSX did have those DJs on to say goodbye to their listeners.
Yeah, that was brilliant for a lot of reasons. Not the least of which was it was really great to, give all those great DJs from KMET a chance to sort of wrap it up and get some closure. I listened to it when they were on KLOS, and that was good. Forgotten about that.
And you also worked at KCAL 96.7 in the Inland Empire. How'd you get that gig?
I did college radio at a community college out in Walnut called Mount San Antonio College. And one of the guys that did radio there with me for a while was Long Paul, who went on to gain fame at KNAC. But Long Paul got a weekend job out at KCAL FM. While we were both still working together at KSAK, the Mount San Antonio College station. And he left KCAL FM to go to KNAC. They were just getting started as a metal station. And through Paul, I guess I met the program director there at the time, Jim James. And, I was sending out packages to a lot of radio stations at that time anyway. And Paul happened to be leaving, and we happened to be friends and all that. So it worked out well. And I wound up literally just taking Paul's slot on the weekends. Wow.
And in fact, right now, Long Paul, he was the co-founder of KNAC.com when they went online.
Yep.
Have you talked to him lately?
Oh, it's been a couple of days.
Oh.
Paul and my son and another friend of ours are part of a Dodgers text group, and we text constantly about the Dodgers and baseball. So, yeah, I've stayed in touch with Paul all through the years. We've never stopped being in touch. I'm pretty sure.
We're talking with Jim Nelson from 91.9 KRVM in Eugene, Oregon. And next time, we talk more about Jim's passion for America's pastime.